Hello, we're live. Do we start or do we wait 15 minutes?
Is it
No,
supposed
wait.
to be
Oh, that's
50
15
minutes?
minutes
So
ago.
start.
Sorry, I read the wrong message. Hello and welcome to Freeplay 2019's online sessions. Freeplay is Australia's largest and longest running independent games festival. The festival is currently running all week in Melbourne, Australia. Tickets to the weekend conference are still available and you can find them at freeplay.net.au. Again, freeplay.net.au. If you'd like to join the conversation, our hashtag is hashtag freeplay19. All right. So, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone around the world. Welcome to a state of games in Southeast Asia. We've invited four very wonderful panelists from Southeast Asia, myself included, to talk about our home countries, video games, maybe some cats, and definitely fight over whose food is best.
Oh no.
So we'll start by introducing ourselves. Um, I'm Javi. I work for BoomZap, and I'm from the Philippines. Yeah. Aren't
So,
you guys gonna
Okay, I guess I'll go next.
Okay.
um, I'm Hanif. I'm from Singapore, working for Joystick Studios, one of the founders, and we're making like Songbird Symphony. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'll go first then. I mean, after. Yeah. My name is LeeYing Fu, and I am a UI UX designer from Malaysia in a company called Kaigan Games.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I think Lee still want to talk. It's my turn.
Sure.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
my
it's your
turn.
turn.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. Fine. Yeah. Go
So
ahead.
my name is Rena. I'm from Mojiken Studio from Indonesia, and all
Mhm.
I do is to the artist. I'm my past work is She and the Light Beetle and Raven Monologue. It's more like experimental game that
Mhm.
take emphasis most on art. That's it.
Ooh. Okay. Great. Great. So we've done our little introductions, talked about ourselves by name and profession, but we haven't really said who we are. So I'd like us to introduce ourselves and talk about what exactly we do in the industry, and not exactly what we do in the company, but where we fit in and how that works out. So who wants to start other than me?
Oh.
Mm.
No, no. Okay, I'll go then. Fine. So I'm Javi. So other than working for BoomZap, which is a work from home job, I'm actually a teacher in De La Salle College of St. Benilde, where I teach Android game programming. I'm also a member of the IGDA Manila, or
Right.
IGDA Philippines rather, where we actually try to promote video games in the Philippines, from game development to esports, but mostly development, definitely. And
Hmm.
we organize these kinds of community events, and we make sure people go. Um, Definitely, community is something I really like focusing on. Making sure everyone's involved and everyone is, you know, a part of the industry.
Right.
And what else? Uh, I also really like I really like the Philippine industry and talking about it. And last year, I was actually part of One Reason to Be in GDC, where I did the same thing and talked about our country.
That's really
Yeah,
cool.
Cool.
thank you.
Yeah.
And you guys?
Um,
Who's go first?
I can go.
Okay.
So my name is Ling Fu, and like I said before, I'm a UI UX designer from Malaysia. So I studied game dev for 3 years, and then I graduated. Then I landed my first job, which is the same one that I still have right now, and I've been at it for 3 years since. I run a community hangout for women and underrepresented people in the industry here in Malaysia called Wig Out. So we
Mm,
we just had our first hangout last Friday, and 10 people showed up, which was a lot for us because it was
Mhm.
like our first hangout. And some people will be like, oh, it's only 10 people. But it meant that 10 people needed the space and needed to hang out and commune together, which meant a lot to me. So, yeah, that's the kind of things I do.
That's actually really cool.
Thank you.
So, Hanif or Rena?
Okay. Um,
And it was then.
yeah. For me, I'd say I'm relatively new to the industry. So basically, me and like two other friends, we basically founded like Joystick Studios right after we graduated, basically. Yeah. Which was around 2017. Yeah. So in terms of experience, yeah, this is our first game and stuff like that. Before, I've just been helping out with my school, I guess, in terms of like student interest groups and stuff. We have one called the NUS, National University of Singapore Games Development Group, where we had like game jams and stuff. Yeah, that's basically it.
Oh, that's really cool. You're pretty fresh. It's nice to have
Yeah.
those kinds of people in the
Thanks.
panel. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Rena.
I don't know. Everyone seems like have this. What is it? So active in game dev community, and instead I'm just here making games. So, first time I've gone to this industry is when I'm still a college student, I think. So I was a visual communication design student. I do a lot of illustration work. So whenever I make a game, I always have this. What is it? What is it? I have this mindset to always make a game visually beautiful, something like that. So I always think like, okay, I want to draw this kind of art style, and what kind of game that would suit this art style, something like that.
I see.
So that's it. And maybe if I think I will talk a little bit, not like, what is it? If all you guys here already have this place in the game dev community, I want someday that in Indonesia, I want to make, I don't know, some like exhibition art, game art exhibition one day. And I still didn't know how to make it happen, but that's my dream right now.
I think that's a really great dream to have. You really seem like an artist at heart.
Oh, and I just found out that Javi is talking in GDC in One Reason to Be too. I think I talked in that panel in 2017. Yes.
Oh, right before me.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello. Who knew? So I think you've got a very colorful cast of people here right now. Lots of different perspectives you can get. So I want to know where that perspective comes from. What's it like making a game in your home country? How's the community? What are the companies, and what are the working conditions, or maybe even the schools, or how people learn how to get into the industry? Who wants to start?
I think I can start. So in Singapore, we have quite a few triple A, I guess, like Ubisoft. I think Bandai Namco is here as well, and we also have a school that you guys know Digipen.
Yeah.
There's a Digipen in Singapore. So I'm not like entirely 100% sure of this, but the trend seems to be that graduates from Digipen would be like the top pick, for this AAA companies and stuff like that. As for indies, we do have a few, and kind of recently we've started doing like gatherings and stuff like that to like really get to know each other. We have this thing called a Singapore Games Guild, which I think just started last year. Yeah, which like organizes events and stuff like that, and that's where we get to know each other. And every few months we do a meetup, see like the progress of our games, play each other's games and stuff like that. Working conditions wise, I can only speak from like personal experience. We have so the government has this governing body called the IMDA, which is Infocom and Media Development Authority or something like that, where they have this building called Pixel, and they encourage startup or game companies to basically incubate there. Yeah, so that's where I am right now actually.
Oh,
Yeah. Mm.
Oh,
So
okay.
for like if you want to like get an office space, yeah, they provide free office space here, and all you have to do is just pitch your game to them, show them like your plans, and just basically show them you have a plan, and they will help you get an office space here, and help support you in until your first game releases basically.
Ooh, okay. Are there any studios specifically to Singapore that we should be watching out for or looking at?
Other
I didn't mean
than
that in a bad way.
other than
I meant
mine.
like,
um, so one of the I guess more well known, or I guess to me is well known because it's in the same like category. Because my company, we're doing games for PCs and consoles. So another one that has been, I would say, quite relatively successful is Gentle Bros, which made Cat Quest. And like Cat Quest came out right when I was like our company started out, and we basically used that as our like role model kind of. Yeah.
ooh, okay. Cat Quest. So what about Rena, LeeYing? What do you guys? What's it like there?
do you want to go first, Rena, or do you want me to go first?
You then.
Okay.
Okay.
So I haven't been in the industry as long as a lot of people. 3 years is not really new, but not very long as well. So I can only speak to my experience. So we have different outsourcing companies. There are companies that make assets for AAA games, and then but we also have like an indie game company where it's a very tight knit community. Like most of us know each other, and we have this thing called the Game Dev Hangout, which is run by Sean Beck of IGDA here in Malaysia, and it's a hangout that happens monthly, and people can showcase their games that they've been working on, or playtest their games there, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I don't know specifically, but I feel like crunch culture is still a thing here in Malaysia. I don't know if it applies to all of you guys locally. Crunch is still like a huge problem here. Would you like to add anything to that? Like any experiences with crunch?
Mm, I don't think I've worked long enough in the industry to actually have been in a company with like crunch hours, but I can see how it can easily become a problem
Right.
with yeah.
In my case, it's more like at first we didn't have actual time when to go to the office and when to end the office hour. So
Right.
it's kind of our life is kind of messed up at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So but slowly we began to plan the time when we have to go to the office, and then when we must give the update for the work of that day in what time too. So after that we can go home.
Right.
Mhm.
I
Sounds like
think uh it's kind of hard sometimes to separate, like, because it's more brain taxing than anything else. Like manual labor, you kind of work from a 9 to 5 job and then that's
Yeah,
it, you're done. But for us, we have to kind of like continuously working, because you're continuously thinking about what to do next, or the kinds of art assets that you should be thinking about, you know.
yeah. Thinking process is always all day long.
Yeah.
And especially I think when we posting in social media, actually in our country in CA, it's more like uh, we have to adjust the time to when the most of our audience is online at the time, so we can we have to, what is it, we have to stay up late to just to post something.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Where, which timeline would you follow? Like,
But for now, it's social media is kind of, what is it? I think we for now we can predict it. So for the Twitter, I think it's better if we in Indonesia. I think it's better if we post it at noon. I don't know if there's more time in our other country.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have similar experiences as well. Because
Yeah.
for my game we do a lot of social media marketing.
Mm-hmm.
However, but I think most of the platforms that we use have actual like scheduling. You can schedule a post, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
yeah.
and we tend to, like, for our time it tends to be like around 11 p.m.
Mm,
Which is when
Right.
lunchtime is around in America and kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's true.
Anyway,
Oh,
about the crunch thing, I think it's from so speaking from the context of like our studio, we have 3 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure like the other companies here whether it's the same, but yeah, for 3 people, um, it's a bit harder to how to say. I guess there's some pros and cons. It's easier to make sure you know that everybody is either like not crunching, maybe, for example, because it's easier to check on everybody. But conversely, you have, less people to spread the work amongst, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, speaking from experience, crunch, we it depends on how you define crunch, I guess. Right? We have like stayed back till like just around dinner, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
just to like finish, like making sure that this build is ready to send over and kind of stuff. Yeah, or to play test. And but that's the extent of it. There was some period where we have worked like over weekends, but that was not very long, I would say. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's still the extent of the crunch.
Yeah.
Like I said, it depends. Some people say like, 12-hour work days or something, which is a bit, it's not what we do. Yeah.
Okay.
oh, I realized I haven't answered the question
Oh
yet.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, when it comes to making a game in the Philippines, it's I guess like other countries, we've got a good range of independent to actual big companies. Ubisoft just opened a branch here recently, so yay. Um, we have companies like Secret Six who are working on their own AAA level games. We have they're working on Project Zendata, but for the past few years, we've mostly been doing mobile games and outsource work. But it's not like baby level outsource work. We've got Secret Six, the one I mentioned earlier, actually worked on Uncharted. So they actually
Oh.
did some assets for those kinds of games.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have someone that worked on Final Fantasy 15, and we have talent that can reach the level of like The Witcher 3. Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
So
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
it is. I'm proud of that. So community wise, it's I think this is a problem that a lot of our country faces, and it's a lot of the because a lot of the industry gets tends to get concentrated around Metro Manila, which is around north-ish in the Philippines. Um, but we try to make sure that the communities get developed. So we have monthly meetups where we talk about our games, and we try to do lectures. So every month we have a different kind of flavor for the month for the IGDA. So we have design, we have art, we have our last one I think was production, and
Mm.
they do pretty well, and I like that. So our indie scene is actually growing really well right now. We're trying to hit a global market with games like Shots Fired, and I can't. I'm thinking of the other ones on the top of my head, but can't bring them up right now. But working conditions, from what I've heard, um, tend to be okay. People get to go home. The big problem isn't working at the company, but life in general in the Philippines. Like you get stuck in traffic for 3 hours, and it really sucks. That's going, and then going back is another 3 hours. That's There's a joke that went around. It's saying like, oh, if you want to get from Quezon City to Quezon City, you gotta travel another 3 hours, and it's really bad.
Wow.
What a lot of companies are doing now is work from home model. I'm very proud that BoomZap actually does it. A lot of it, BoomZap's actually an international company, but a lot of the employees are in the Philippines, so they understand what I mean when I talk about the traffic. But even then, even when you're working from home, internet can be pretty bad. So
Right.
it's a struggle to just stay connected sometimes. And there's been rotating blackouts recently, but it's a struggle, but we get by. I like to think that we're getting by.
Okay.
School-wise, we have a few game dev courses that just opened up recently. I think one is partnered with Ubisoft itself. So I think there's a lot of potential for growth in our industry there. Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah. So we've talked about where we're from, what it's like making a game, but how do people perceive those games in the country? Like, how supportive are locals, not game devs, like actual people outside the industry? How supportive are they for local games? And how supportive are governments, or are there any initiatives that help the game development scene? So I will think we start with LeeYing. Yeah.
Okay. So how supportive? I feel like there are groups of people who know of games that are making here in Malaysia, and but there's a bigger group of people in Malaysia who don't know that we exist.
Mhm.
um, and they assume like, oh, we just make random games or games that wouldn't be published in the market and such. Uh, I have this problem where I go in public setting where people ask me, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "I make games," and they assume that I make Call of Duty, and I'm like, "No, I don't make Call of Duty." Then I say like, "Oh, I make more like mobile games," and then they go like, "Oh, do you make Mobile Legends?" I was like, "No, no, those are two extremes. It's crazy."
I actually think that's a common experience no matter where you're from.
Yeah.
Actually, it's easier to say yes like that and just go.
I know, right? Explaining to them is like, oh no, I'm not gonna do it now. But we do have a government body called MDEC, which is short for Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. So they not only take care of games, but the digital economy in Malaysia. They run like a game dev convention called Level Up KL every year at the end of the year, and it's more of a B2B, but they do encourage people to uh, join who are consumers. Like they give free tickets to people who join game jams,
Mhm.
uh, and that government body MDEC also provides the workspace that I'm working at called Level Up Inc. So they basically fund this place, kind of like what Hanif said in Singapore that we have. So it's like a co-working space where you get to work for free to incubate, right, to work on your games. So that's the kind of support we have from the government. Other than that, they do go around different states because I think, like Javi said, that most of the game development is kind of centered around like a city or something. So us, we're more centralized in Kuala Lumpur. So
Mhm.
the government body and that kind of like reaches out to other states that are not close to KL or doesn't have the resources to come down here. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. So, um, for here in the Philippines, it's what do you call this? A lot of the support from come from organizations that help the industry itself. So we have the GDAP, which is different from IGDA.
Mhm.
GDAP is Game Developers Association of the Philippines, where um, entire companies become members of the GDAP, and they receive benefits that help their companies grow and become bigger in the industry. As for players, I'm it's actually sad to say, but I don't think we have a lot of support from Filipinos aside from playing um, advert games targeted towards them. But a lot of it for our independent scene as isn't as awesome as I'd want it to be. Like I read a news article earlier. It was talking about, hey, this new game is coming out, and then a lot it a lot of the comments were like, oh, this isn't as good as something we'd see internationally,
Wow.
and it just kind of hurts when you hear that from your your own players. But I think once we keep working on our games, as long as we keep trying to push it out, eventually we'll get that support from our own people because we have the talent.
Yeah.
We just need support,
Mm.
and there will always be initiatives to make the communities grow. We have,
Mhm.
yeah, like I mentioned earlier with the IGDA and GDAP, but players might be a problem for now.
Yeah.
So how's it like what about in Singapore?
Oh, for us, it's less about like support, and I think I agree with Ling. It's more about awareness.
Yeah.
Mm,
It's whether or not they know that one, we exist, and two, that the games they're playing were from Singapore in the first place, right?
Right.
Um, um, so I've personally, like, from my experience, I think Google, or was it Apple, they had this section a few months back, or maybe it was last year, where it was like games made in your country or something like that. And then I opened it up, and there was, I had no idea there were this many games, right, in mobile. Yeah. So yeah, I can see how, like, other gamers would, just see the same, like, go through the same experience. Um, Back when I did Game Start, which is our, in Singapore we have a game convention called Game Start. Um, I would say that the support is there. It's just like I said, the awareness. Once they know, like, this game was made in Singapore, they'd be interested. But whether or not say no in the first place is an issue, because I feel like Singaporeans, there's this like I don't know, or maybe it was back then, but there's this culture of playing games in like internet cafes or LAN shops, right? And like Dota or League or maybe even L4D. I don't know whether that's still relevant, but that seems to be the biggest, kind of like type of games that Singaporeans, or at least like younger Singaporeans, tend to be like aware of, or even bother to take notice of. Yeah. In terms of government support, though, like I mentioned, like this building, but yeah, I've been to KL Level Up like last year at Kuala Lumpur, and I really loved it because I don't think there's no such thing in Singapore right now. There's a game convention for like B2C, where public come and play the games and stuff like that, which is cool. But there's no like having a B2B conference in Singapore. You would be cool because you would see, you get to know, it kind of encourages new studios. I
Right.
feel, because I feel like there's not really many new indie game studios. Like I feel like an anomaly here, where basically I made a studio right after graduating, and since then I only know like one other studio that's done that. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Wow.
you're
Okay. Yeah.
starting to recognize this studio has been here for how long, this has been here for how long, but you don't see new ones.
Right.
Yeah, that's currently what I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So what about in Indonesia?
Here in Indonesia, it's like at first I think it's 5 years ago when I know about game developer. I think what is it? There are so many people that it's just like what Ying say about there are a lot of people that didn't know that we exist,
Mm.
and but from recent year, I think there there are many people in Indonesia that know that we have our own game developer company in here. But sadly, not sadly, I think because Indonesia is consisted of many islands, so I think I can talk for for all of the Indonesian continent and everything, and I just can share about what I feel here in main island, in Java Island, and I think that's one of our one of our trouble too, because we are so separate to so many area, and so when maybe if we see here in Java, we can say that, oh, there are so many game developers that game developer studio that born in here, but I can say so about other land, something like that. And about the community, it's more like we have many people, of course, but somehow uh, when we make games, it's rarely our people didn't know about our own game, something like that. So it's kind of troubling that there are still many. What is the term? Wait, I'm opening Google Translate like.
Magic of Google.
Oh, okay. There are still many problem about piracy, and
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
even when our game is out there and people know that we make games, we still got piracy from our own country,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the time it's more like yeah, we still cannot convert this many people to become our audience for our own game.
Yeah,
Most of all, like people just playing Call of Duty, like Link says,
yeah.
Mobile Legends, yeah, something like that. And about about the government, actually we have this backcraft. It's like economy. I'm opening Google Translate again.
It's like
Creative economy body of government. That
yeah,
and they have this some program that help us, especially in game industry, to help in some of aspect. It's more like this one. It's a Backcraft Developer Day. It's more like a conference for publics to see how. It's more like, what is it? It's more like promoting our industry to public who didn't know how to make a game in this country. And there is Backcraft Digital Lab. It's more like uh, for people who need hardware or workspace,
Okay.
we can apply to it. And the Backcraft Game Prime, it's more like showcase event that we promote our own game to them. Actually, I don't know, it's 2 years ago or 1 year ago there. In this event, there we have so many people that comes to there. So many public people who didn't know game developer at first. It's because we held a mobile legend competition.
oh, yeah. Or,
They feel like we bait them with Mobile Legend and come
yeah.
here, see our own game.
Actually, we have a very similar event in the Philippines called the Esports and Gaming Summit.
Yeah,
So it's there in ESGS where we actually we have a lot of esports since this is like Philippines Dota country, right? So um, during that event we have like an entire side just for the independent developers and our
mm-hmm.
own game developers. So we have that indie fiesta, and it's only like there where people say, "Oh, people actually make games in this country," and it's both amusing and heartbreaking at the same time.
Right.
But it seems like that seems to be the problem with all four of us. Just
Yeah.
letting our country people know, because like in the US it's, oh yeah, that's definitely an American game. Or in Japan, they made Mega Man and Sonic and Mario, and yeah, it's not quite the same anywhere else apparently.
I I kind of have a follow-up question to that. Like, so the consensus is like esports holds a bigger awareness in your prospective countries than it does with game making, like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I
It's
mean,
really. I mean,
yeah,
it's because I think it's because people are these games are more accessible and we have more. What is it? It looks more cool to other to public,
yeah.
and we and for me personally, I still can. What is it? I still can make that crowd, make that crowd to love my game so much, so like that esport game, Mobile Legend or Dota, Call of Duty. I think it's because visibility too.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's of course like
definitely.
a competitive element. Yeah, that makes it a good spectator kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's true.
That actually we've had two games being developed here, trying to push into esports right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the game Sandata I mentioned earlier is actually I hope they don't kill me if I'm wrong. It's class-based and it's very well designed. It looks very very pretty.
What was the name again,
But
sorry?
Project Zandata, that's Xandata. Sandata means sword in Tagalog, Filipino. It's very
Right.
cool.
Cool.
And despite the quality, it's not just the esport problem. It's really just trying to get your locals to play your game. It's difficult. Like
Yeah.
you set the price point, you want to compete with Dota. Dota is free.
Yeah.
How can you
That's
compete with
true.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another one. We're actually trying to make a fighting game. It's actually related to the next question in the panel. So, uh, let's. Do we have time? Do you want
Yeah,
Kind
to?
that's
of.
cool. Yeah, that's cool.
I think we can do a quick run through the question.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, what I wanted to ask is, we've talked about the industry, we've talked about us, but what about the games? So, the one thing I really want you guys to think about is what is our cultural identity in game making? Like, if I said, if I asked you what kind of game would the Philippines make, or what the kind of game your country would make, what would you say that game would need? How would you put your culture into that game? And if there are examples of games that have that culture from your country.
Hmm. That's a hard question.
That's a hard question. So I'm volunteering Hanif.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, I guess there's kind of two parts to address there. Yeah, then of course the one about making a Singapore kind of game, but also like how you would make that kind of game. So I guess Singapore, the thing that people would immediately be able to identify with is like two. I can only think of two right now, which is food definitely, and the Singlish,
Right.
right?
So
Yeah, la and all that stuff. But whether or not, the second part to that is how you make that, right? Because Singapore is a small country with I think I think 5-6 million people. That's still not a lot. That's very little. So if and out of those 5 to 6 million, how many percent of them are gamers? How many percent of them are indie gamers? So would I make a Singapore game for Singaporeans? Probably not. But would I make a Singapore game to you know and to kind of like tear down cultural barriers and introduce Singapore to the world, then maybe, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's I guess I would say to that.
That's really cool.
I
I
have a
am
feeling
actually
everybody
curious.
is gonna say food.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. So what about in Indonesia with Rena?
um, in Indonesia, I don't think we can. What is it? Make one specific genre to or one specific culture to make it like this is Indonesia because here in Indonesia we have so many islands, so many cultures, so many
Mm,
language even. So I think what can be described as Indonesian is more like its diversity. It's like how many color we have. So I think if each of us can represent our own what is it mother culture, I guess our culture or our uh, everyday situation into game, it would be more like what we call Indonesian identity, more like that. But
Mm,
I think it's uh, I don't know if can say it true, but there are so many people already thinking about usually all our game is like Java oriented. So if there are
mm,
many Indonesian people watching this, I'm encourage you to take another culture from all around Indonesia to make it into game and show it to people internationally like that.
mm. Let's see. For the Philippines, it's weird because it always feels like we're in this constant struggle to find out what our national identity is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, some, you know how a long time ago when sometimes when a Filipino would be abroad or in some other country and they win awards there, it's like, oh, that Filipino is finally in the international thing. He's finally made it big. That's that's always the struggle we have. That we have to be internationally recognized for us to recognize our own selves.
Mm,
Right.
Yeah,
So it never feels like anything is enough until other countries have seen it. So on top of that, there's also I can't really identify what makes a game uniquely Filipino, but
mm,
I can think of the games, but I can't really put my finger on it. So we have the games that are super obviously Filipino, where um, it talks about our food, like um, the street vendors and how would you sell fishbowl, like Street Food Tycoon. And
yeah,
then we have games, a more recent one, a fighting game called Bayani, which which gets our figures in our history and tries to make them super cool.
yeah,
That's
Um,
really cool.
yeah,
yeah.
it just seems to be this weird mix of I want to plug in being a Filipino in my game, but I also want my game to be internationally accessible.
yeah,
It's I don't know how we can actually what do you call that, marry those two concepts, but I feel like
yeah,
right now it's those two things that make our cultural identity a thing. So trying to meet the international standard but putting in whatever fragments of Filipino culture we can get into the game. Yeah.
yeah. Actually, all we can do is more like put a little thing of our homeland into the game that we present it internationally. I think
Hmm.
with the more game we make, the more game other company make, I think it will slowly make identity for our own country like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Mhm.
the conclusion is just make many game, please.
That's true. The more games that come out, the more we'll figure it out. That's true. So what about in Malaysia?
So this is something that I feel very strongly about, with culture identity and such. So I feel Malaysia is specifically divided with like language and race. So there are a lot of language barriers. For example, if you're Chinese, you might speak Chinese. Malay might only predominantly speak Malay, and like those things kind of divide us in a sense. So, and if you make like a Malaysian game that's like speaking in English, some people wouldn't actually understand it, right? Because not everyone knows or understands English.
Mhm.
Uh, there are things that we share that are in common, right? But we are still diverse enough to not that we can't be lumped inside like a one size fits all kind of thing. And I think everyone's bringing up food because this kind of reflects in their food as well. Because for us in Malaysia, we have things that are universal, like nasi lemak, roti canai, and chicken rice, right? But there are specific dishes. There are specifically Chinese or Indian or Malay, right?
Mhm.
So those are the specific things that we can't put like, oh, a Malaysian game would be like this kind of thing,
Mm.
right? And I feel like a lot of Malaysian game makers don't make games from Malaysians. One of the problems would be what I just mentioned, us being like kind of divided specifically by language and race, and also things like money. Like it's a risk, right? Making a game for a Malaysian audience that isn't aware that we make games. Like no one would want to do that, right? Like who would risk their livelihoods for that?
Mhm.
Uh, I think all of you were like talking about how to marry this idea of making a game that's specifically for your country, but also wanting like international audience to kind of play it. I feel like me personally, I feel like this isn't just on us to make international people aware of our games, right? It's got to be like a meeting point, right? They have to kind of reach out to us because people from other countries with better spending power, with kind of like more power, as in like influence, should support games that aren't made like internationally,
Yeah.
right? Like they should reach out to us the same way that we should reach out to them. Only then that could kind of work, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing is it's in my previous project, She and the Light Mirror. It's
Mhm.
actually the game that comes from Indonesian made. But at first, I didn't promote it that way because I don't think people out there will have this, what is it, relevancy about uh, our Indonesian made. But
Right.
somehow, uh, when I reveal it in some events, there so many people like more interested in that fact rather than they are not making any problem about, oh, that's your that's your culture, it's not mine, so I didn't care about that. It's not like that. It's more people out there are more, what is it, more care about what we have, and I think it's our strong point to present it internationally
Mm-hmm.
like that.
I guess the issue then is cultural barriers and whether or not we can translate it in a way that people can easily understand.
Yeah,
Like for example, a map, right? I don't think there's much like cultural barriers to that, right? While they may not know like what's so special about this part of the country or what's so special about other part of the country, but just understanding that it's Indonesia's map maybe is enough of a cultural like information for them to be interested.
yeah,
But there's not much barriers in place there for them to like be like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna bother learning about this because it's too much for me to
yeah,
try to understand. Yeah, yeah. So in the end, yeah, I agree that definitely that I say international players, it'd be good if they are interested in finding out, oh, this game came from a country that's not one of the normal ones, like not one of the Western countries. That'll be
yeah,
so I'm kind of interested to play in it. But also, yeah, we need to it's not as easy. It's not so as simple as just making a game that is Singaporean. It's like yeah, you need to make a game that people understand is Singaporean and also can still like how to say translate it into their own like cultural understanding. Yeah.
mm,
I
yeah,
think the part with that is like people are scared that like Rena was worried that putting a game made in their country wouldn't receive well because we're scared that people will
Yeah.
shame us for it. So I think like everyone should be more responsible, like a responsible audience. Like just because you don't understand something that's not from your culture, don't make fun of it. Like be responsible, be respectful, be like, okay, that's not my thing. But I like where you're coming from, right? Don't shame people for it. Don't make fun of people for their culture, you know?
I'd say that even extends to the capabilities of skill of the industries, because a lot of the industries in different countries are developing at different rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the games coming out of let's say my hometown would be different from, like, of course, the for every example, Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, it kind of makes sense because digital historically digital video games are like was made and then made popular in the West. So they would be better at it, right? Because they're
mhm.
in it much longer, right? So that's kind of unfair to say like, oh, your game is not Call of Duty level because well, we haven't been working on it as long as they have. So I don't know if it's equal. It's right to kind of put us all in like this equal scale, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow
The
the one who says that is actually from our own people too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
yes,
the one that hurts the most, right?
yeah,
Where you make game, you didn't make something like Call of Duty.
yeah.
oh, yeah.
I guess what we're kind of trying to discourage or what hurts is when people use what country the game is made from as a seal of quality or a way of like telling what
Yeah,
quality the
yeah.
game is, for example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that got really sad.
it got so down
But
suddenly.
that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yay.
I guess privilege is really something that other countries have, and that's a reality we have to understand and face.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Mhm. So we're actually running out of time. I think we got a bit more time, so let's head on over to the question and answer. So what are our questions? Let's wait for
That's the
Do,
questions.
do we wait here in the group chat or?
I guess so,
I
yeah.
think so. Okay,
Or are we supposed to go to Twitter and just check it out? Oh, okay. So ask your questions over at hashtag Freeplay19
that's one
and
way.
we'll watch for it. We got one question from some guy named Ben. So when it comes to outsourcing, do you generally use local companies or do you look outside your country or even outside the sea area?
Outsourcing like if you're making a game here locally and then you want to outsource to other people is I think that's the question.
Yeah, this I'm not so sure if
I,
this means
yeah.
outsourcing as in
I
we
think it's
do
more,
the work.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's more like when we have a project, uh, we look for outsourcing for the people for the talents.
Right.
Hmm.
I
Well,
think the process of making a game is like there's a lot of things involved, so any of this can be outsourced, right?
Mhm.
Uh, for okay, I guess I can speak for like my game. We like the development wise, everything has been just us, including audio, including yeah, writing and stuff. But we do have help from a overseas publisher in terms of localization and QA. But
Right.
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, so much. All this time, all we have to outsource from other countries, more like for localization and QA and something like that. Because especially in Indonesia, we didn't speak English fluently. So if you
mm,
make something like a story driven game, you have to outsource other people who know both uh, the what is it local tongue and uh,
Right.
my, my own Indonesian language too, something like that. But most of all, I think we outsource what we knew best in around of us, because I think it's better to talk when we can face the people on spot, not online.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
oh,
sorry.
I'll go really quickly. For us, we because Malaysia's spending power is not as high as other countries, so we look locally, or if not, we look to our neighbor, which is Singapore. So for one of our games, Simulacra, we had help from Imba Interactive that made all of the sounds for us. Yeah, so that's mostly kind of it for outsourcing, I guess, because everything else is expensive. Like especially if you look at rates
True.
from the US, like no way we're gonna be able to afford that, right? Yeah.
I have the same answer as Leeing, except that we do the outsourcing. So, so if we have that level of quality, why do we need to look elsewhere, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Okay, so here's another one from Eshan. Did I say that right? I hope I said that right. What does everyone on the panel think games from Southeast Asian regions would look like in 7 or 8 years? I'll start with a very simple answer:
Hmm.
Call of Duty. No, but I hope that for me personally, I hope that we'll be able to like actually look at our games and say it doesn't matter how good they look, how bad they look, who they're from, but I want people to look at their games and say, "Hey, that was made in the Philippines. It looks like a Filipino game." Yeah, that's my simple answer for that.
This is actually a very hard question.
Yeah.
If I want to have a dream right now, I think uh, Indonesian game in 7 or 8 years from now will more like polish. We can reach other audience out there, and we actually have made game that with better uh, polishing, maybe with better
Mhm.
quality, of course, and uh, it's me personally hope that in Indonesia we have more experimental games, so not just the Call of Duty again, and it's more we reach in different part where uh, other country didn't make it. I think like that.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. For Singapore, I think we tend to be kind of like reactionary in terms of like new technologies and stuff. Like when mobile games like started becoming a thing, suddenly there's a lot of mobile game developers, and when VR, AR started becoming a thing, you know, yeah, and our government encourages that as well. I feel like any new technology, they're like, okay, everybody just start experimenting, researching, try doing all this stuff. So yeah, whatever new technology comes next is what we're gonna be doing probably. Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't know because I'm really bad at predicting. I wouldn't know what like Malaysia would look like in 7 or 8 years, but I do hope that we would move, like Rena said, like more experimental games instead of like focusing solely on commercial games. If it would sell well, if it will make a lot of money, but that also relies on support from people like the government body, yeah, and the people, right? Like one of the things I liked when I was in Australia was that there was a huge emphasis on that, like you don't only make games commercially, you make them experimental. Like you can do live games where you like perform live if you wanted to, because that's all encouraged. So that's the kind of thing I wish, at least I would want for Malaysia to go towards, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think.
I think these answers they're all really good. I think we all want to see those kinds of games
Yeah.
from other countries. I'm actually surprised with Hanif's answer, with the technology thing. It sounded very unique to your culture. Actually, we do that here with the.
That's what I see.
Okay, so we got another one from Chirming. I hope I said that right again. Um, what is one thing you would tell local gamers and developers to do to help grow your local game industry?
Hmm.
Hmm,
Okay,
who's
I'll go first. I think from our discussion earlier, I think we can all agree is like just try to keep informed of like at least the indie industry. Okay, maybe not even just indie. I think indie is probably asking a bit too much, but but at least like any games that are coming out of from Singapore, be it like for example Ubisoft, they I think an upcoming one is like um Skull and Bones or something, right? Which is the
Right.
pirate ship thing, and that was made in that. Okay, I think majority was made in Singapore or is being made in Singapore, for example, that kind of thing. And yeah, if you can get to know your indie developers, that'd be good. Go for like any game conventions because most likely we'll be there. You know, trying our best to make sure everybody knows. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. For me, I think for local gamers to be more aware, like Hanif said, to be more aware of the industry, the kind of games that we're making, and I guess for developers is to kind of build within your community a lot more. Like you're not an isolated person who is working on a game by yourself at your home, right? So because that's kind of easy to do when you're making your game by yourself. Yeah, like kind of build around your community, reach out to your community a lot more so you can share ideas, talk about the kind of games that you would want to see. Yeah, I feel like not a lot of people outwardly do that. So yeah.
Hmm. For me, similar. I'd tell people to go to game developers to go to community meetups, and I'd
Yeah.
tell gamers to just please play the games. My God. But more importantly, all things aside, especially to students, I want to say, please just make your games. Stop having these grand visions to make the next big MMORPG, to make this huge game that everyone will buy or play. Sometimes it's just make the game, express yourself, put it up on some free platform like itch.io or Newgrounds, and just make it. As long as you're making games, you're making games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, if it's for me, for our local gamers, it's like it's more like play our game, play Indonesian game more. I
And
think,
buy them. Buy them.
and buy it, yeah, play and buy them because uh, we make a living here. And for developers, I think it's more like I think we have to think about treating our own market here in Indonesia. We always glorify it ourselves with we have so many people, we have so many potential, but we didn't make any difference with that potential. So I think that's it.
Right.
Okay, so we'll do one last question here from Benny. Do you think games will become more diverse and cross-platform in their medium in the future? Let's keep this quick. Yes or no?
Of
Definitely.
course.
Yeah.
Diverse, yes. Cross-platform, I'm not really sure.
But wait, wasn't I forgot Dread Out is from
Yeah,
Indonesia.
Indonesia, yeah.
yeah, it's being made into a movie, right?
Yes,
Is that
yeah.
something that you
Oh,
locally
okay.
talk about?
Yeah, it's actually because we have Together is so hype at the time because PewDiePie play it.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, so we have more Indonesian love, meme love, YouTube love, media social because so when there are other what is it? the famous people play it, we always got hype of it,
Right.
Mm.
something like that.
I didn't know
Oh,
Dread was going to be a movie. That's so cool.
Yeah.
so I guess that wraps up our panel. Is there anything you'd like to say, any one of you? Just to any messages for the people watching?
Plug, plug.
People, yeah.
Plug, plug.
Pardon my bad English at first, Indonesian English, of course. And it's really nice to talk with all of you guys here, and I hope with all of people watching this. So I think uh, I enjoy this session, and maybe some of you too, or maybe you don't. Please pardon us. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
What game are you making?
Uh,
What game are you making?
uh, Previously, I make one experimental game, Raven Monologue, and and She and the Light Bearer. It's more like
Huh?
story-driven game. And right now, I make another project. Right now, it's titled When Past Was Around. It's still not finished, but you can see the update in my Twitter. Maybe some of you want to promote your own game too. Okay.
Well, if you like pixel art and you like rhythm games,
Mhm.
go to joystick.com. Yeah.
Hey.
Mm,
So Hanif, Javi.
okay. It's all hush hush for now. I can't say anything, or I think my boss might kill me. But if you want, follow BoomZap on Twitter for details. And for those in the Philippine game dev community or just anywhere else on the planet, please do follow IGDA Philippines Dash Manila on Twitter. That's at IGDA PHMNL. Yeah. And follow me,
Yeah.
of course, at Snackbite. BYT.
um, so for me, I really enjoyed this because even though we kind of are close by, we don't really like kind of talk to each other in a sense. I mean, I
Yes.
know the closest is Singapore and we kind of like talk to each other more, but that doesn't happen across the region, right? So this was a really cool kind of thing to be able to talk to everyone. Uh, so games I'm working on is a sequel to one of the first games that I've commercially released. So the game is called Simulacra 2, and it's still in development, but it will probably come out this year. We don't know when, but it's around this year.
Okay.
You can follow at Play Simulacra on Twitter for updates, I think. And to follow me is at Yingtastic on Twitter. So yeah, that's about
Yeah.
it.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. That was the state of games in Southeast Asia. Thank you to our four panelists, three other panelists aside from me, LeeYing, Hanif, and Rena.
Yeah.
Thanks,
And I'm
Javi.
glad everyone had a great time. So thank you and good night. Yeah. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it gonna say bye?